For most of us, time feels like the only true constant, a river that flows one way, carrying us steadily from yesterday into tomorrow. Yet every so often, stories surface that challenge this comfort. Whispers of moments when time stutters, reality bends, and people find themselves adrift between worlds. Some speak of wandering into the past. Others recall seeing futures that haven't yet arrived. A few even describe stepping into places almost like our own, but not quite. Landscapes familiar, yet wrong in subtle, unnerving ways. Unlike tales of scientists or adventurers traveling through wormholes or machines, these encounters happen without warning and without intent. They are slips, brief, uncontrollable intrusions into another layer of existence. And for the rare few who return, life is never the same again. Ancient whispers. The idea that time may not be fixed is not new. Even the ancients suspected that our reality is only one layer of something far larger. Over 2,000 years ago, Plato called time a moving image of eternity, suggesting it wasn't a line, but a cycle, more like the endless rotation of stars and planets than a straight path. Across cultures, the same pattern appears in myth and scripture. Tales of mortals who vanish, visit strange realms, and return to find centuries have passed. Could these be the earliest echoes of time slips? Ancient people witnessing the same rift modern witnesses describe today? In Hindu cosmology, the universe itself is said to repeat in vast cycles called yugas. One story tells of King Kukudmi, who ascended to the heavens seeking a worthy husband for his daughter. When he returned, entire ages had passed, and everyone he knew was long gone. In the Hebrew book of Enoch, the prophet is taken to the heavens and shown mysteries of creation. Though he spends only weeks in the divine realm, he returns to find generations have passed. And in Celtic legend, the warrior Oisin travels to the land of eternal youth, Tir na Nog, only to discover that when he steps back onto Irish soil, hundreds of years have flown by, and he withers into dust. Whether seen as divine punishment or cosmic error, these stories share one lesson: time cannot be trusted. Echoes in modern history. Jump forward to 1901 in the gardens of Versailles. Two English women, Charlotte Ann Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, are enjoying a quiet afternoon when the world around them begins to shift. The light changes, the air thickens, the landscape grows still, unnaturally so. Ahead, they see people dressed in 18th century attire, strolling across the lawns as if from a painting. When one of the women asks for directions, the stranger's reply feels hollow, his voice distant. Eventually, a tall, dark man leads them back toward the Petit Trianon, and suddenly, they're surrounded by modern tourists again. Later, when they tried to retrace their path, they found that the route no longer existed. Both women swore until their deaths that they had somehow walked through another time. Years later, in the bustling streets of Liverpool, something similar would happen. Bold Street became infamous for its phantom moments. Witnesses describing walking into stores that no longer existed, or seeing people in outdated clothing before the world seemed to blink back to normal. These events were fleeting but vivid, always leaving those who experienced them shaken, unsure which version of reality they had truly belonged to. And then came the case of Sir Victor Goddard, a Royal Air Force officer in the 1930s. While flying over an abandoned airfield, he suddenly saw it restored. Hangars repaired, men in blue uniforms working on bright yellow planes. 4 years later, that same base was rebuilt, exactly as he'd seen it. What he'd witnessed that day, no one could explain. From myths to modern reports, the pattern remains. A strange hum in the air, a shimmer of light, a step, and suddenly, reality no longer behaves. The man who vanished behind a tower. Carl Reese was an unremarkable man by all accounts, an electrician from Kentucky with a modest life and a quiet temperament. But on the morning of June 19th, 1989, something happened that would tear his reality apart. Carl and his team were sent to inspect a relay tower near Fort Campbell. It was a clear, warm morning, the kind where nothing extraordinary should occur. His wife had come along for the drive, setting out a picnic blanket while Carl checked the wiring behind the structure. At 10:47 a.m., she saw him walk around the base of the tower, and he never came back. At first, everyone assumed he was simply out of sight. But after several minutes, panic began to build. They searched the open field surrounding the tower, shouting his name. There was nowhere to hide. No trees, no buildings, just empty grassland. 16 minutes later, at 11:03, Carl stepped out from behind the tower as if nothing had happened. Only his expression betrayed him. Pale, drenched in sweat, eyes wide with terror. His watch read 2:03 p.m. Later, he explained what had occurred. He'd heard a strange buzzing, like static building before lightning strikes. The air shimmered, and then the world was gone. In its place was a corridor of cold concrete, stretching endlessly in both directions. The lights above flickered, and the silence was absolute. Following the passage, he came to a steel door with a glowing black panel. When he reached toward it, the door opened with a sharp beep. Inside stood two men in white lab coats, one of them holding, of all things, a potted plant. They seemed unsurprised to see him. One jotted a note, slid a small metal disc across the table, and before Carl could speak, a deep hum filled the room. Then a voice said, "Not yet, you can't stay." There was a blinding flash, and he was standing behind the tower again. That night, he couldn't sleep. His mind overflowed with images and information he didn't understand. He filled 11 pages with sketches and notes, mentioning something called Project Gateway. Years later, declassified military files revealed documents referencing the Gateway process, experiments involving altered states, and possible time-space manipulation. Carl's notes even contained a code later found in a classified defense report. Somehow, he had written down information no civilian should have known. But the experience destroyed him. He withdrew from his wife, covered mirrors in his home claiming they were doors. He died decades later in a hospital, haunted by nightmares of red corridors and faceless people. The car that crashed across time. A year before Carl's disappearance, another strange event occurred hundreds of miles away. David Hale, a young man from North Carolina, was searching for work when he took a drive to attend an interview at a warehouse. The directions seemed simple enough, until the roads began to shift. Landmarks were missing, signs didn't match. Eventually, the pavement gave way to dirt, the highway dissolving into winding farmland. Up ahead, an S-shaped curve loomed. Just as David slowed to take it, a black vintage car appeared, speeding toward him. The driver swerved, too late, and the vehicle careened off the road into the tall grass. David braked hard, heart racing, watching the car tumble before vanishing into the field. After waiting several minutes without movement, he went to check. There was nothing there. No wreckage, no tire tracks, not even flattened grass. Shaken, he continued on, late for his interview, unable to focus. The image of that sleek black car haunted him. On the way home, he retraced his route, only to find that the road was different. No dirt section, no S-bend, but there, off to the side of the road, sat a decaying car, the same model, but rusted through, long abandoned. It was as if he had seen a crash that happened decades earlier, a ghostly echo replaying itself for him alone. The Canyon of No Return. But perhaps the most chilling case is that of 4 young women who, in 1972, vanished briefly into a world that wasn't ours. It was late evening, and they were driving back from a rodeo in Utah, hoping to reach their dorm before curfew. To save time, they took a little used road through Gadianton Canyon, a place locals quietly avoided, whispering about strange lights and missing travelers. At first, the detour was uneventful. Then, the road narrowed, hemmed in by steep canyon walls. When they reached a dead end, they turned around, and everything changed. The asphalt had turned to cracked concrete. The sagebrush and red sand were replaced by fields of unfamiliar crops. And though the night had been moonless before, a bright full moon now shone overhead. Ahead, they spotted a building, low, angular, marked with symbols that didn't belong to any known language. As they slowed, the doors opened, and tall, pale figures emerged, moving strangely, shouting in a language none of the girls could recognize. Panic took over. They sped away, headlights bouncing over the cracked road. But behind them, strange vehicles appeared, glowing ovals with a single beam of light and no sound. As the craft drew closer, there was a blinding flash, and the women suddenly found themselves driving through the Nevada desert, miles away from the canyon. When police found them the next morning, their car was stranded with 3 flat tires. Tire tracks led only a short distance into the desert before vanishing, then reappeared miles away beside the wrecked vehicle. No signs of dragging, no logical explanation. Each woman told the same story. None ever set foot in Gadianton Canyon again. Beyond understanding, skeptics insist these are coincidences, tricks of the mind, or shared hallucinations. Psychologists point to stress, exhaustion, or the brain's habit of filling in gaps in memory. But that explanation doesn't account for shared experiences, or for Carl Rees's classified knowledge. Physicists, on the other hand, speak of many worlds, countless realities existing side by side, sometimes overlapping, like ripples in water. If that's true, then perhaps these slits are moments when 2 ripples meet, and for a few terrifying seconds, we find ourselves in the wrong one. Maybe certain places, a canyon, a field, an airstrip, are weak points, where space and time thin just enough for something to pass through. Or perhaps, as the ancients believed, time is not a line at all, but a circle, and every so often, that circle folds in on itself, allowing yesterday and tomorrow to touch. Whatever the truth, one thing remains certain. Those who've crossed that invisible boundary never return unchanged. They come back quiet, distant, and haunted by something they can't explain. The feeling that somewhere, just beyond our sight, another version of the world is waiting. And maybe, every now and then, it looks back,